At 2:13 a.m., Claudette Holloway was ordered to push a dying elderly woman into a blizzard. When the nurse refused, Rosebridge made her the villain, as the stranger clutched her chest and collapsed. A brass bell rolled from her bag, carrying a promise the hospital had buried for years. Before sunrise, 7 minutes of security footage would vanish. When her identity surfaced, everyone would learn why that bell was worth destroying Claudette to hide. Before we get into the video, kindly like, subscribe, and share, and tell us where you're watching from. "Get a stretcher," Claudette shouted. For a moment, everyone in the lobby seemed frozen by the same fear. It was the fear people felt when a bad decision stopped being a policy and became a human being on the floor. Then movement returned. A young resident ran from the emergency department. Mateo Ruiz, the older of the two security officers, hurried to retrieve a wheelchair. The reception supervisor, Preston Bale, remained behind the desk with one hand pressed to his radio. Claudette lowered Okja carefully. "Can you hear me?" Okja's eyelids fluttered. Claudette checked her pulse again. Too slow. The woman's skin felt cold beneath her fingers, though sweat had gathered near her hairline. The resident knelt beside them. What happened? Chest pain, shortness of breath, pulse in the 40s. The resident's expression changed. A healthy adult heart usually beats somewhere between 60 and 100 times each minute. Okja's heart was moving far below that range, like an exhausted worker falling behind on a dangerous job. "We need a cardiac room," the resident said. Preston stepped around the desk. "She hasn't been registered." Claudette looked up at him. "Then register her." She refused to provide insurance. She can refuse to sing the national anthem too. None of that matters right now. You cannot take an unidentified person into a restricted treatment area. She just told us her name. We don't know if it's real. Okja's fingers tightened weakly around Claudette's sleeve. "Cold," she murmured. Claudette removed her scrub jacket and covered the woman's legs. That simple act changed the room. One of the custodians stopped mopping. Mateo lowered his gaze. Even the young resident seemed embarrassed that no one had covered her sooner. Preston spoke into his radio. "I need the administrator on call." A calm voice answered almost immediately. "This is Eleanor Fitch." Claudette knew that voice. Everyone at Rosebridge did. Eleanor was the hospital's chief nursing officer. She rarely raised her volume. She remembered birthdays and sent handwritten cards after family deaths. When Claudette nearly lost her nursing license 2 years earlier for arguing with a physician, Eleanor had personally defended her. At the time, Claudette thought Eleanor had saved her career. After Ellis died, Eleanor had also sat in Claudette's kitchen until sunrise, while Sabine slept against her shoulder. Claudette had never forgotten that kindness. That was why hearing Eleanor's voice on the radio hurt more than any order Preston could have given. Preston explained that an unidentified woman had been sleeping in the lobby. He said she had refused to cooperate. He mentioned Claudette's interference. He did not mention the blue lips. He did not mention the chest pain. Claudette reached for the radio. She collapsed. A pause followed. "How long was she assessed before the collapse?" Eleanor asked. "She wasn't assessed." Another pause. That one felt different. Eleanor's voice returned, still controlled. "Bring her into emergency care. Claudette, remain in the lobby when the team takes over." Claudette looked at the woman beneath her jacket. "I'm going with her." That wasn't a request. The stretcher arrived. As the team lifted Okja, the old woman refused to release Claudette's hand. "Stay," she whispered. Claudette had spent 14 years learning when rules protected people and when they protected institutions. She understood the difference by now. "I'm staying," She walked beside the stretcher as it disappeared through the emergency doors. Behind her, the brass bell remained on the floor. Matteo picked it up. He studied the engraved words, then slipped the bell into Okja's cloth bag. That small decision would matter later. Inside the treatment room, sticky pads were attached to Okja's chest. Wires carried information to a monitor above the bed. The line moved unevenly. Dr. Priya Shah examined the first reading. Her heart rhythm is unstable, Claudette explained in plain language as she worked. Your heart has an electrical signal that tells it when to beat. Right now, that signal is getting delayed. Okeya watched her with frightened eyes. Die? Not while we're standing here. It was more confidence than Claudette felt, but fear needed somewhere to sit. She offered her own voice. Priya asked if there was family to call. Okeja's eyes moved toward the cloth bag. My son. What's his number? Okeja did not answer. Mrs. Han? Her expression closed. No call. The monitor gave a sharp warning. Her blood pressure was falling. The attending physician rushed in and ordered temporary pacing. The purpose was simple even if the procedure sounded complicated. Okeya's heart needed help keeping time. A thin wire would be guided through a vein so a small electrical signal could encourage each beat. Claudette leaned near her. You may feel pressure. Keep looking at me. Okeja stared into Claudette's eyes as the doctor began. Why? She whispered. Why what? Why you stay? Claudette thought of her brother Ellis. During a sickle cell crisis, staff had decided he wanted drugs rather than help. They left him waiting until a blood clot reached his lungs. Claudette arrived 22 minutes too late. I know what it feels like, she said, when people decide your pain is inconvenient. Okeja squeezed her hand. The monitor steadied. Then Eleanor Fitch entered wearing a cream coat over her clothes. Snow had melted along the shoulders. Concern warmed her face. You did the right thing by catching the emergency, Eleanor told Claudette, but your conduct in the lobby will need to be reviewed. A woman nearly died, and she is receiving care. She almost received a sidewalk. Eleanor lowered her voice. Go home, Claudette. I'm in the middle of patient care. You are no longer assigned to this patient. Okeja heard her. Her hand tightened around Claudette's. No. Eleanor smiled gently. Mrs. Han, Nurse Holloway has completed her shift. Claudette bent near Okeja. I'll come back. Okeja looked toward the bag. Bell. It's safe. Bring Jun-ho. You said not to call your son. Okeja's gaze filled with something older than anger. Bring him when he remembers who he is. Outside the room, Eleanor removed an envelope from her coat. Across the front were the words, Notice of Immediate Suspension. That was when Claudette understood. Eleanor had not driven through the snow to check on a patient. She had come to remove the witness. At 6:40 that morning, Daniel Hahn stepped out of a black car beneath Rosebridge's entrance. He had been attending a medical foundation dinner when his phone began vibrating. He ignored the first call because Rosebridge employed enough people to manage a winter night without him. The second call came from Priya Shah. The third came from his mother's old landline. No one spoke when he answered. He only heard breathing before the call ended. Daniel left the dinner without explaining. He was 51, though people often thought he was younger. He carried himself with the economy of a surgeon, even though he had stopped operating regularly after becoming Rosebridge's majority owner. His father had once run a free clinic from a narrow brick building near Chicago's Korean neighborhood. Daniel expanded that clinic into a network with modern surgical rooms and more than 2,000 employees. Magazines called the story a triumph. His mother called it an eviction. Eleanor waited outside intensive care. Daniel, where is she? Stable for the moment, What happened? Your mother entered through the lobby after midnight. She appeared confused and would not provide identification. Staff believed she was seeking shelter. Why was she outside? She wasn't outside. I saw the report. Security was escorting her from the building. An employee overreacted. We are reviewing it. Which employee? Nurse Claudette Holloway. Daniel had expected a security officer's name. A nurse ordered my mother out? No. Claudette interfered after patient relations made the decision. The situation became chaotic. Daniel stopped walking. Was she examined before security touched her? That is one of the questions we are investigating. Through the glass wall, his mother looked smaller than he remembered. Tubes connected her to machines. For 4 years, Daniel had imagined their reunion. In some versions, she apologized. In others, he did. He had never imagined a guard outside her door. He entered alone and sat beside her. Ioma. Her eyes opened. She looked at him, then turned toward the window. I'm here. Already happened. I know. No. You know report. Then tell me. Your hospital put old woman in snow. I didn't know you were here. That is problem. You refuse to give your name. My name should not buy kindness. Daniel had no answer ready. Where is nurse? Okeja asked. She was suspended. Okeja pushed herself up. Pain crossed her face. You bring her. You need to rest. You bring her. Daniel opened her cloth bag. Inside was an envelope bearing his Korean name, Han Jun-ho. Beneath it lay the old brass bell from his father's clinic. He lifted it. No one waits outside. You remember? Okeja asked. Yes. You remember sound. You forgot promise. Daniel's phone vibrated. Security had sent him the lobby footage. At 2:06, Okya sat near the entrance. At 2:07, Preston approached. Security arrived 1 minute later. Then the image jumped forward. The next visible moment showed Okja on the floor. 7 minutes were missing. Daniel looked through the doorway at Mateo. Who edited this footage? I don't know, sir. Who can? Mateo's eyes moved down the corridor. Eleanor stood beside the nurse's station, speaking softly with a manager. She looked up and offered Daniel a reassuring smile. For the first time in 15 years, he did not find it comforting. Claudette returned to her apartment above a laundromat on the south side. The radiator clanged whenever it tried to produce heat. A photograph of Ellis stood beside a stack of bills. Sabine Holloway sat at the kitchen table in her school uniform. At 16, she could read her aunt's mood by the way Claudette removed her shoes. What happened? Sabine asked. Nothing you need to worry about. That usually means rent. Claudette placed the suspension letter on the counter. They fired you? Suspended. Do they still pay you? No. Sabine looked toward an envelope from her school. A deposit for a summer engineering program was due in 9 days. We'll manage, Claudette said. I can skip the program. You earned that place, and you need rent. I said we'll manage. Sabine folded the letter. Is this because you yelled at somebody? That is a fair question. Claudette explained what happened. Why would anyone throw out a sick old woman? Sabine asked. They said they didn't know she was sick, but she said her chest hurt. Yes. Both were thinking about Ellis. A knock sounded at the door. Eleanor stood in the hallway with coffee and a paper bag from the bakery near Rosebridge. She did not feel like a stranger at that door. After Ellis's funeral, Eleanor had carried food into this same kitchen and washed cups while Claudette was too numb to move. She knew which chair Sabine preferred and which cabinet held the coffee. That history entered the apartment with her, making the visit feel comforting before it felt dangerous. Sabine took her coat for school. Before leaving, she paused beside Eleanor. My aunt saved somebody. Eleanor's expression softened. I know. After Sabine left, Eleanor placed a separation agreement on the table. If Claudette resigned, Rosebridge would provide 6 months of salary and continue her health insurance through the year. The disciplinary record would remain private. Claudette read the final section. I can't discuss what happened. It protects the patient. The patient asked for me. Eleanor leaned back. Daniel Hahn is involved now. The owner. This has moved beyond a nurse arguing in a lobby. Media attention could damage Rosebridge. If public trust drops, ordinary workers suffer first. You're asking me to disappear. I'm offering a safe exit. Safe for whom? Eleanor stood. Think about Sabine. Eleanor knew exactly what those words could do. She had once promised Ellis's frightened daughter that Claudette would never face hardship alone. Now she was using that promise to frighten Claudette into silence. The words were gentle. That made them worse. After Eleanor left, Claudette's phone rang. This is Daniel Hahn, the caller said. How is Mrs. Hahn? Stable. Her heart valve is severely narrowed. One of the doors inside her heart cannot open properly. Blood is struggling to move through. What are they doing? She needs a replacement procedure. She refuses consent unless you are present. She barely knows me. She appears to trust you more than she trusts me. There was pain in his voice. He hit it quickly. I'm suspended, Claudette said. I own the hospital. And yet someone deleted 7 minutes from your cameras. Silence. Come to Rosebridge, Daniel said. Please. Your mother decides where we speak. If she asks for me, I'll come. If you're using her to bring me into a private meeting, I won't. You don't trust me. I met your hospital before I met you. Less than a minute after the call ended, a message arrived from intensive care. MRS Hahn asked for you. Claudette picked up her coat. Eleanor's agreement remained unsigned. Daniel waited outside intensive care. You'll be accompanied while you're here. Am I visiting a patient or entering custody? Claudette asked. My legal counsel advised supervision. Your mother asked for a nurse, and you brought lawyers into it. The anger in Daniel's eyes looked closer to shame. I'm beginning to understand that, he said. Okay, job brightened when Claudette entered. You came. I said I would. Claudette explained the valve procedure. Doctors could replace the damaged valve by guiding a new one through a blood vessel in Okja's leg. It avoided opening her chest, but still carried risk. Okja answered with one word. No. Daniel stepped closer. Without treatment, this will happen again. No surgery here. The cardiac team is excellent. Hospital has good hands. Bad door. Claudette hid a smile. Okja asked her to open the envelope, marked with Daniel's Korean name. Inside was a letter and a deed to a small brick building on West Argyle Street. Daniel recognized it. The old clinic. I thought you sold it. Your father put half in my name. Okja said. I give clinic back to sick people. The building hasn't operated as a clinic for 12 years. Then open door. It needs repairs. The zoning has changed. Okja looked at Claudette. He speaks expensive words when answer is no. Daniel rubbed his forehead. I can build something larger. You always build larger. The old conflict in the room had not begun last night. Daniel's father had treated people who could not pay. Vendors stopped delivering supplies. The roof leaked into an examination room. After his death, Daniel paid the debt and closed the building. You closed his door, Okja said. I kept his work alive. No, you made beautiful hospital. People afraid to enter. This hospital has a charity program. Your nurse did not know. Claudette told him staff were encouraged to move people quickly. Patients who lacked the right documents rarely reached financial assistance. That isn't our policy, Daniel said. It may not be the policy you read. Hospitals have two sets of rules. One is printed for inspections. The other is taught through raised eyebrows. Okay, John nodded. Daniel's phone rang. Eleanor. He declined it. She told me old clinic was shame. Okay, John said. She said you could not become important carrying poor people on back. Daniel went still. Eleanor never said that to me. She said to me, "Why didn't you tell me?" I did. You heard angry mother. You did not hear words. Daniel was about to argue. Instead, he stopped and considered whether his memory had protected him. Okaya lifted the bell. Your father said hospital is promise with walls. Wall should keep weather out, not people. I didn't order anyone to remove you. You built place where someone believed they could. His phone vibrated again. A news outlet had received a report claiming a suspended nurse assaulted security while treating an unregistered visitor. Claudette's photograph appeared beneath the headline. Daniel called legal. His face darkened as he listened. The report lists you as the person who authorized my mother's removal, he told Claudette. That is a lie. I know. It was the first time he said it without hesitation. 7 missing minutes. Matteo agreed to meet Claudette in the chapel. I have 2 children, he said. My daughter needs surgery next spring. Rosebridge insurance covers most of it. I'm not asking you to lose your job. Yes, you are. The honesty silenced her. Matteo took out his phone. Security radios recorded recent clips, but he used another app because supervisors sometimes changed their accounts after incidents. He played the lobby audio. Preston reported an uncooperative transient. Matteo asked whether medical staff had assessed her. Eleanor's voice replied, if she continues refusing registration, remove her before morning traffic begins. Preston told Eleanor the woman had mentioned chest discomfort. She has been sitting there for over an hour, Eleanor answered. If it were an emergency, we would know. The next part captured Okja pleading, the bells striking the floor, and Claudette shouting for security to stop. That proves she knew, Claudette said. Matteo nodded. Will you give it to Daniel? My daughter's surgeon works here. Fear was not always cowardice. Sometimes it had a child's face. Keep it for now, Claudette said. Daniel waited outside the chapel. He led Claudette to a records room containing documents from the original clinic. His father had created a charity fund. Part of Rosebridge's annual earnings was supposed to support uninsured emergency care. The fund still received money, but the number of patients helped had dropped sharply. Where did it go? Claudette asked. Facility stabilization. In normal words. Administration moved it into operating expenses. Another folder contained the Lobby Safety Initiative. Staff were encouraged to classify visitors without identification as non-patients until a formal medical complaint had been recorded. Federal law required hospitals to examine people seeking emergency help even if they could not pay. Rosebridge's internal procedure created a cruel gap. If staff avoided recording the request, the hospital could later claim the person had never become a patient. They made people invisible before removing them, Claudette said. Daniel's signature appeared on the approval page. I signed this. Did you read it? I read the summary. That means no. During the previous 18 months, 47 visitors had been removed under the initiative. Most were elderly. Several had limited English. One name caught Claudette's attention. Lucille Pryor, a woman from her church who suffered a stroke after leaving Rosebridge. Lucille had told staff her hand felt numb. The warning had been classified as vague discomfort. Daniel called Eleanor. We found the lobby policy. Come upstairs, Eleanor said. This should not be handled in a basement with a suspended employee. Claudette stepped closer. Why did you order Mrs. Hahn outside after hearing she had chest pain? That is not what happened. We have audio. If an employee made an illegal recording, Eleanor replied, that employee will face immediate dismissal. Daniel ended the call. Claudette saw his face change. Eleanor was more interested in finding the witness than denying the words. An alert arrived on Daniel's phone. His access to the hospital's financial system had been restricted because his mother might bring a claim against Rosebridge. Eleanor had moved first. Daniel remained the owner, but he could no longer see what his executives were doing. Eleanor Fitch did not think of herself as cruel. That was what made her dangerous. At 18, she watched her mother die in a hospital that closed 6 months later under unpaid bills. The building had only one working ventilator. Another patient was using it. Eleanor decided compassion without control was another form of neglect. She studied nursing, then management. She learned how quickly a generous policy could become an empty account. When she met Daniel, he had vision. Eleanor gave that vision limits. Then Rosebridge expanded. Wealthy patients expected private rooms and quiet entrances. Donors complained about people sleeping in the lobby during winter. Eleanor created the safety initiative. At first, it removed aggressive visitors. Later, confusion became enough. The hospital looked calmer. Complaints decreased. Each compromise made the next one easier. She told herself Rosebridge was surviving. She stopped asking who paid. At the executive meeting, Eleanor placed Claudette's disciplinary history before the board. Years earlier, Claudette had cornered a physician who delayed treatment for a young black sickle cell patient. The patient improved. Her conduct still violated policy. Nurse Holloway is deeply affected by her brother's death, Eleanor said. Last night activated unresolved trauma. Claudette felt every eye move toward her. Eleanor had turned grief into evidence. What does my brother have to do with your order? She asked. It explains why you misread a difficult situation as deliberate abuse. Your voice is on the recording. An incomplete recording. Daniel placed the lobby policy on the table. You approved that program. Eleanor reminded him. I approved a different summary. Then you failed to read what you signed. Yes, Daniel said. I did. Eleanor had expected denial. My failure does not erase yours, he continued. I kept Rosebridge alive while you accepted awards, she said. When charity costs rose, I found money for payroll. You took money from my father's fund. I moved it where patients still benefited. Which patients? The ones already inside. Claudette leaned forward. What about the people outside? Eleanor's restraint cracked. A hospital cannot treat every suffering person who reaches the door. It has to examine someone reporting an emergency. You think one dramatic rescue gives you the right to judge decisions you do not understand? No. The 47 removals give me that right. The room fell silent. Eleanor played an edited clip of Claudette threatening to have security charged. The plea for help was gone. So was Claudette's warning about the slow pulse. For the safety of Rosebridge, Eleanor said, I recommend immediate termination. The board asked for the full recording. Daniel and Claudette thought of Mateo's daughter. Neither exposed him. The board voted. Claudette's suspension became termination. In the corridor, Daniel promised he could reverse it later. You had the truth in your hands, Claudette said. I was protecting the guard. So was I. When Daniel returned to the cardiac floor, Okja's room was empty. She had signed a refusal and left. The bell was gone. So was the deed. Outside, snow had started falling again. Claudette found Okja sitting on the steps of the abandoned clinic. The old building leaned between a grocery store and a new apartment tower. Plywood covered one window. Snow collected on the faded Korean lettering above the door. Okaya had wrapped a hospital blanket around her shoulders. "What are you doing here?" Claudette asked. "Waiting. For whom?" "My son. Maybe he remember address." Claudette sat beside her despite the cold. "You could die proving a point. Then point very strong. Your heart does not care who wins this argument." Okagja looked toward the boarded window. This place had one heater. In winter, patients brought blankets. Nobody leave cold. Claudette stood. "Do you have the key?" Okagja took a brass key from her bag. Inside, the clinic smelled of dust and old plaster. Examination rooms had become storage spaces. A faded height chart remained on one wall, covered in pencil marks from children who were adults now. Okagja touched the chart. "Junho here." A mark beside age 12 showed that Daniel had once been shorter than his mother. Claudette found an old space heater in a back room. It did not work. She called an ambulance, but Okja refused transport. "You cannot keep walking away from care," Claudette said. I walked towards something. "What?" "My son." The front door opened. Daniel stood beneath the old bell bracket, breathing hard. He had driven through the city and run the final block when traffic stopped. His eyes moved from his mother to the pencil mark on the wall. "You remembered the address," Okja said. "I never forgot it. Same thing, sometimes." Daniel removed his coat and wrapped it around her. "You need the valve procedure." "No, please." "You want fix heart, because broken heart embarrass doctor." His face tightened. "You think this is about embarrassment? I think you know how repair body. You do not know sit with pain." Daniel knelt so they were eye to eye. "Then teach me." The room became still. Okagja had waited years to hear those words. Now that they had arrived, she did not know what to do with them. Claudette stepped away, but Okja caught her wrist. "Stay." Daniel looked at his mother. "Why did you stop speaking to me? You stopped first. I called. You talked about medicine, weather, money. You never ask why I hate hospital. I thought you hated what I built. I hated what building did to you." Daniel lowered his eyes. After his father died, he had worked until exhaustion. He believed success would prove the old clinic had not failed. Every new wing became an argument with grief. He expanded until he could no longer see the first door. Okagja touched his hair, as if he were still 12. "Your father did not need you make clinic important. It already important to people inside." Daniel's voice broke. "I was trying to save it. I know. It was not forgiveness. It was the first opening." Then Okja's hand dropped. Her body tilted sideways. Claudette caught her and felt for a pulse. This time, she could barely find one. The ambulance returned Okja to Rosebridge. Daniel rode beside her, holding the oxygen mask in place when she tried to remove it. In the emergency room, the cardiac team warned that medication was no longer enough. The valve had to be replaced within hours. Okagja remained conscious but refused to sign. Daniel asked the lead cardiologist to leave them alone. "Ioma, tell me what you need." Claudette nurse. She was terminated. Then fix wrong before fix heart. Daniel looked through the glass. Eleanor stood at the end of the corridor with hospital counsel. Reinstating Claudette without board approval could be challenged. Delaying the procedure could kill his mother. Claudette leaned close to Okja. "Do not make your life the price of my job." "Not job, truth. Truth will still be here tomorrow. You may not be." Okja looked frightened now. Beneath the stubbornness was a woman who knew death had entered the room. "I am afraid," she admitted. "So am I," Daniel said. She turned toward him. It was the first time she had heard fear in his voice since he was a child. Daniel sat beside the bed. "I cannot promise nothing will go wrong. I can promise I will not leave. I won't operate. Dr. Mira Park will lead because she does this every week, and I trust her hands. I will be here as your son." Okja studied him. "You not control?" "No." That answer mattered more than any medical explanation. She signed the consent. Daniel immediately used his authority to place Claudette on temporary clinical assignment under the cardiac director. Legal counsel protested. "If the board wants to remove me afterward, let them," he said. Eleanor approached Claudette near the scrub area. "You think you won," she said quietly. A woman agreed to treatment. "This is not about winning. You have no idea what happens when a hospital's finances collapse. People lose more than dignity." Claudette looked at her. "Your mother died waiting for a machine." Eleanor's face changed. "You told me that story after Ellis died," Claudette continued. "I thought it made you understand me. It made me understand scarcity. No, it frightened you so badly that you became the hallway that took her from you." Eleanor stepped back as if struck. The operating team wheeled Okja away. Claudette walked beside the bed until the restricted doors. Okja held out the brass bell. "For after," she said. Claudette took it. "After what?" Okja managed a faint smile. "After door open." The doors closed between them. The procedure began shortly after sunset. Dr. Mira Park guided the replacement valve through an artery in Okja's leg. A screen showed its slow journey toward the heart. Claudette watched from the support area. Daniel stood beside her wearing scrubs, unable to touch the instruments. For a man who solved fear by taking control, waiting was its own operation. Halfway through the procedure, Okja's blood pressure dropped. The room sharpened. Mira adjusted the device while the anesthesia team corrected the medication. Daniel moved instinctively toward the table, then stopped himself. "Let them work," Claudette said. "I know." His hands had begun trembling. "She is not a case," he whispered. "No, she's your mother. That is why you should stay where you are." The monitor steadied. Daniel released a breath he had been holding for years. In another part of the hospital, Matteo sat beside his daughter Camila in a pediatric clinic. The surgeon had called to say her operation might be postponed because Matteo's employment was under review. Eleanor had found him. Camila watched her father stare at his phone. "Did I do something?" she asked. "No." "Then why do you look mad at me?" Matteo realized fear had followed him home and sat down beside her. "You didn't do anything." He opened the recording app. For hours, he had told himself that silence protected his child. Yet the same silence allowed a hospital to endanger someone else's mother. He sent the audio to every board member. He copied the state health investigator and a reporter. Then he walked to security headquarters and placed his badge on the desk. The full recording reached the board while Okja's new valve was opening inside her heart. This time, no one heard only Claudette's anger. They heard Okja say her chest hurt. They heard Preston ask whether medical staff should be called. They heard Eleanor refuse. They heard the order to remove the woman before morning traffic. The 7 missing minutes had returned through sound. Malcolm Keene called an emergency board session. Eleanor entered believing she could still explain. She spoke about donor expectations and winter safety. She described Claudette as emotionally compromised. Then Matteo appeared on the conference screen from his car. "I followed the order," he said. "That is my shame." The order was hers. Eleanor looked around the table. "You will destroy this hospital over one mistake." Daniel joined by video from the surgical floor. "It was not one mistake. It was a system. You signed it. Yes, my name belongs in the investigation too. She had no defense prepared for a man willing to share the blame. Daniel continued, "If Rosebridge survives only by pretending sick people never asked for help, it does not deserve to survive unchanged." The board voted to remove Eleanor from authority, pending an external investigation. Preston was suspended. All lobby removals were stopped immediately. Eleanor stared at the people who had praised her for years. "You think kindness pays salaries?" she asked. "No," Daniel said. "People do. We forgot which people." The call ended. At that moment, Mira Park emerged from the procedure room. "The valve is working," she said. Daniel closed his eyes. Claudette rang the brass bell once. Its sound moved through the quiet corridor. Okja woke the next morning. Daniel was asleep in a chair beside her, his head resting against the wall. His hand lay open on the mattress. She placed her fingers in his palm. He woke immediately. "Ioma? Hospital food bad." Daniel laughed before he could stop himself. The sound became a sob. Okja looked at him with concern. "Valve break you?" "Something like that." Claudette entered wearing temporary credentials. Okja lifted her free hand. "My nurse. For today," Claudette said. Daniel stood. "For as long as she wants." Claudette looked at him. "We are discussing that later." News of the recording spread quickly. Former patients contacted investigators. Lucille Pryor's family learned that she had not wandered away as they had been told. Rosebridge's board hired an independent team to examine every removal. The phrase patient dumping appeared in the report. It meant pushing away someone who might need emergency care because treating them would be inconvenient or expensive. For Eleanor, the reckoning was public. Her employment ended. The nursing board opened a case over the altered reports. Prosecutors reviewed whether evidence had been destroyed. Yet her deepest reckoning came later, in a courthouse corridor. Eleanor's father, Walter, had attended the first hearing in a wheelchair. During a break, his breathing became shallow. Eleanor called for help, but people stepped around them, assuming he was only tired. Claudette happened to be leaving another room. She saw Walter's color and knelt beside him. "He needs an ambulance." Eleanor stared at her. "After everything?" Claudette checked Walter's pulse. "He didn't do it." She remained until paramedics arrived. Walter recovered from a small blood clot in his lung. Doctors said the quick response mattered. Eleanor visited Claudette several weeks later. There was no coffee this time. No agreement waited in her bag. "I told myself I was protecting the hospital," Eleanor said. "You were protecting the part of it that praised you." Eleanor accepted the words. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Good. It keeps this conversation honest." "Why did you help my father?" "Because care is not a prize for people who behave well." Eleanor looked down. For years, she had believed scarcity forced her choices. Now she had to live with the knowledge that fear had become ambition long before she noticed. Her license was suspended. She was required to surrender the bonuses she received under the lobby initiative. A portion helped pay medical costs for the patients removed under her policy. It did not restore lost time. Lucille still lived with weakness on one side of her body. Justice could not make the past clean. It could stop the lie from continuing. Daniel did not repair Rosebridge with a speech. He began with the 47 names. Each person received an apology that admitted what happened without hiding behind language. Their medical expenses were reviewed. Families were invited to speak to the board. Some refused. Daniel did not blame them. He resigned as chief executive while remaining the majority owner. A community physician took the role, and a council of nurses gained authority over emergency access policies. Claudette was offered the position of Patient Safety Director. She rejected the first offer. "The title sounds impressive," she said. "What power comes with it?" Daniel showed her a rewritten contract. She could stop any removal when a medical concern had not been assessed. She could report directly to the board. No executive could dismiss her findings alone. Claudette signed, after adding one sentence. "Frontline staff may halt a process in good faith without retaliation when patient safety is at risk." Daniel read it. "You don't trust owners. I trust rules that survive owners." He smiled. "Fair." Rosebridge paid for Sabine's engineering program as part of Claudette's lost wages, not as a reward for silence. Sabine made sure that distinction appeared in writing. Okeya recovered slowly. She walked the cardiac hallway each morning with one hand resting on Daniel's arm. Their conversations remained awkward. Healing did not transform them into people without history. One morning, Daniel brought seaweed soup in a thermos. In Korean families, the soup was often eaten on birthdays as a reminder of the meal given to mothers after childbirth. "It isn't my birthday," Okja said. "I know. Too much salt. You haven't tasted it. I know you." She ate the entire bowl. Months later, the old clinic reopened. Daniel wanted to call it the Han Community Health Center. Okja refused. "Too much name." Claudette suggested the Open Door Clinic. Okja approved. The building offered basic medical screening, help with insurance forms, and a warm waiting room during dangerous weather. No one had to prove an ability to pay before a nurse checked whether something serious was happening. Rosebridge funded it. Local Korean businesses contributed equipment. Members of Claudette's church organized rides for older patients. The clinic did not erase cultural differences. Okja still thought Claudette put too much sugar in tea. Claudette thought Okja treated every physical complaint with food before medicine. Their arguments became a kind of affection. On opening morning, a crowd filled the sidewalk. Mateo arrived with Camila, who had recovered from her surgery. He had been reinstated as head of safety after the investigation cleared him. His new training began with one sentence: "Security never decides whether pain is real." Lucille Pryor came with her daughter. She walked slowly with a cane. When Daniel approached to apologize, Lucille raised a hand. "I'm not ready to make you feel better," she said. "I understand." He did not ask again. That restraint was new. The brass bell hung above the clinic's restored entrance. Its surface had been polished, though the old scratches remained. Okja insisted on keeping them. "Scratch is memory," she said. "Polish too much, forget hand." Daniel stood beside her beneath the doorway. "Would you like to ring it?" he asked. Okja shook her head. She pointed toward Claudette. Claudette had spent the morning moving between patients, checking forms, and reminding volunteers not to use complicated language when simple words would do. "This belongs to your family," Claudette said. Okja looked around the waiting room. A Korean grandfather sat beside a black mother holding a feverish child. A construction worker warmed his hands near the radiator. Sabine was helping an elderly patient enlarge the text on a phone. "Family inside," Okja said. She placed the bell's cord in Claudette's hand. Before Claudette could pull it, the front door opened. A woman stood outside in a thin coat. She appeared confused. One hand pressed against her stomach. The receptionist started to ask for identification, then stopped. Claudette approached the woman. "Come inside. We'll ask questions after you're warm." Daniel watched from across the room. Months earlier, he might have seen a possible expense or a disruption to opening day photographs. Now he saw a person hesitating at a door. He moved a chair closer to the heater. Okja noticed. She touched her son's arm. "You remember," she said. Daniel looked at the old clinic photograph mounted near the entrance. His father stood beside the bell. Okija was young. Daniel himself was a boy caught between them, unaware of what either parent would one day ask him to carry. "I'm trying," he replied. Koja smiled. "Trying his door. Keep open." Claudette helped the woman sit. A nurse began checking her vital signs before asking about money. Only then did Claudette return to the bell. The room quieted. She thought of Ellis, whose pain had been treated like an inconvenience. She thought of Lucille and the 46 other names hidden inside administrative language. She thought of Mateo, who risked his job after fear had nearly persuaded him to stay silent. Claudette also thought of Eleanor. Reckoning had not turned Eleanor into a monster. It had revealed something more uncomfortable. Ordinary people could commit terrible wrongs while telling themselves they were being responsible. That was why promises needed witnesses. Claudette pulled the cord. The bell rang above the open door. Its sound was modest. It did not erase grief or return lost years. It could not make every sick person well. It did something smaller and more honest. It reminded everyone inside what the building was for. Okija slipped her hand into Daniel's. He held it without looking away. Outside, snow began falling over Chicago again. This time, no security officer moved toward the entrance. A volunteer carried blankets to the chairs. The woman near the heater received care before anyone asked what she could afford. And when the old brass bell rang a second time, no one was being sent into the cold. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Till next time.